What's up, boys? DJ and Cole here. We're going to do a belt build out today. For the guys who aren't familiar, we're going to go over the packaging, kind of soup to nuts all the way through everything it comes with, and a little bit of tips and tricks for right-handed, left-handed build outs.
So when you're unpackaging the belt, do a quick packaging. So a little lanyard that keeps it tight. Use that for a watch, whatever. 3-layer belt. So you got the outer belt right here that you molly weave all your pouches in, holster, different stuff like that. And then we have what we call the outer sheath. So the outer sheath goes over the inner belt when you're not wearing the outer belt.
You can also double them up, EDC belt, non-metallic. It's kind of a lot of guys doing.
It's nice too when you double these up, add some more rigidity, and again, kind of the EDC non-metallic, as well as kind of why we picked the way the Velcro goes. You know, I just referenced the scratchy Velcro facing away from your body, vice towards your body, just from our experience. When you have the Velcro facing in towards you, it either grab on clothing or rub on some dad love handles.
Yeah.
So.
And then for the guys, we know the reality, got to go to the chow hall, got to look uniform. So we did the outer sheath with it, because if not, every time your t-shirt drags on it, it's going to chew that up too. So we put that on just to protect the clothes, but it makes it super easy just to ball it up and then get to work.
So we're gonna give DJ a chance to show you guys how he does it for right-handed, and a little after that we'll show you how I do it the left-handed, and show you guys some tips and tricks and tools we recommend.
Awesome, let's do it. All right, we're back. We've got the belt broken out. I've got my inner belt on. Sheath has been removed because we're about to size this thing for ourselves. Couple issues we see do. You've done it, I know I've done it 10 times, and we make these belts. I will size this entire thing to me, and then I will forget about sliding on my pouches and everything else. So before we do it, because you know, there's a whole bunch of variety of different pouches we have out there, but if you want to save yourself time and energy, remove the buckle first and slide whatever IFAC you were going to run on, and then we'll size it to the end user.
So on this belt build out too, we're going to go over where we place the IFAC, the True North MHA, the single rifle, double pistol, and cover why we place it where we place it, in the correct order, in our opinion, where we do, and then some of the mistakes we made.
First things first, we have pass-throughs all the way through, and then a molly field. So in the orientation you want this thing to go, pass it through under both sets. So you run that through, get it started.
So the biggest preference, in our opinion, is centering the IFAC on your lower back, whether you're sitting in a vehicle, a helicopter, moving around. That's where we found it most comfortable, in the center of the back, and it allows for the tourniquet to be ambidextrous as well, grabbing it right-handed or left from the top. So that's kind of our approach on the order, but it'll run free and smooth before we molly it, but we'll start sizing it after that.
Because that's the issue, is everybody who's ever mollied on anything knows there's nothing fast about it. Doesn't need to be fast, you need to take your time when you do it, but you'll be one square off and it'll drive you insane. You have to redo it. So that's why we size this whole belt. We leave a little bit of play. Like, in my opinion, everything really slows down here. That's why we get a buddy check, to really make sure it's perfect for you. So
kind of one other thing, I'm not going to say I've done it, but I've done it, is I'll put my pouches on and the belt will be upside down. So it's always a recheck on making sure your pouches are facing the right direction.
I have also woven this thing all the way on. These things are super tight. We've got the Velcro on here, so it makes it super tight when you run through this pass-through. But I have done that and had to undo it because I didn't have it locked in the correct position. So this is how I started. We go through the bottom, we bring it back through, and it is going to be a nightmare to try to get this.
So I mean, a couple of tools we use, we have Leatherman's, flathead, some other molly tools, but it's allowing that separation gap, and that's one reason why we're not trimming the excess initially, because it gives you kind of the right taper.
I mean, that was one of the reasons we added this yeah, we have to be able to double it back on itself, but it's really to try to take up as much space in this friction adapter as humanly possible, so once we finally crank it and fine tune it, it won't slip. There's nothing more annoying than running around and having to constantly readjust your belt. So that's one of the reasons we did it.
Yep.
Cool. All right, let's get this thing through.
It definitely helps with a buddy to help you kind of check that and see where that's center, as well as how DJ feels. Because the way I see it at center, but the way DJ may feel in his gear rides, and sometimes people don't put their belt on that's matching up against the Velcro, so it's not even. But it's kind of like what, measure twice, cut once. So same sort of thing. Measure twice, molly once.
So for me, I like my buckle straight down the center where it opens and closes. I'm trying to get that as tight as possible, and I want this thing tight. I don't want it sloppy. So for me, that's just what I do. I open up a gap, and then I start to tighten this thing, just little by little, just pulling it out. Because I want this thing, I mean, me personally, I like it pretty snug. Like, I want it to feel like it's actually gonna hold some weight, because we're about to put a full-size pistol on it.
Yep.
Bunch of mags, so I want it to where it's not going to slip. And adjusting it this way, I haven't had to do a single adjustment on any of these belts.
Once you find that adjustment and sizing, you should never have to set it back up again unless you're adding some major layers on. Then again, whatever you trim, you leave enough on that trim to kind of accommodate for that.
Cool.
So before you take it off, how does the med pouch feel? So a couple things you can do, not saying use a permanent marker, but I do. Your buddy or partner can kind of mark the spots with a marker, or if you find a little wedge, it's like that's where that edge needs to marry up. It's always good to take it off.
So he's got my corner. That's how we know we're locked and secure. Now we can start buying this thing on there.
I mean, a couple tools. I think this is just one Molly tool. It's an upholstery clip remover. Or, I mean, needle nose. I've used knives, pins, whatever you have available. But we've stabbed each other before.
Yeah, don't use a knife. I mean, I've stabbed myself so many times. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. A little bit of pressure and then it finally gives, and you're like, yep. So don't use a knife. Flatheads get real dangerous, but obviously they're all doable. So we find out whichever one you want. What I recommend, so we actually use the Tegris as the Molly system.
So the binding tape, binding tape goes over the Tegris, and you're Molly weaving it through the Tegris with the binding tape.
So other companies out there that use Tegris as well, they're not using the Tegris as the actual Molly field, so it's tight. That's why it doesn't slip. But it is kind of a pain to get this thing started. So if we just kind of spread it out a little bit, it returns to its original shape. It'll make your life a little bit easier. It's gonna go through. I just give it a little twist, and that's what I'm gonna start with.
So one good thing too, once DJ gets the first Molly started, is to try and refit it again with your body, and just as a double check before you finish up modeling the entire pouch. Because again, this pouch was designed to be a low profile. We designed it around the Focus ETK, based off of our experience. Some of these med pouches are super bulky, and it just adds to kind of a painful ride. But DJ will try it on one more time, get a sanity check that it's in the right location. To me, I mean, depending on how you wear it, it's like either we need to shift over one.
Almost feels like we need to go that way.
Yep.
Yeah. You go that way one?
Yep. So we need to go over one towards the mail end.
Yeah. You need to go that way.
Yep. All right. So we just shifted over one, finished up the test fit, making sure it's at the center of your back. DJ?
Yep.
Kind of spin.
Center you?
Yep.
Feel center me. All right, we'll finish this thing up.
So once DJ finishes mollying it too, this is a good time if you want to trim any of the excess right here. You can trim either with a hot knife or honestly a pair of scissors. biggest thing, we have these bar tacks there for that reason, so when you trim it up, the fraying will stop. But one thing to tighten up too is either use a lighter or again, you use a hot knife, trim it up.
All right, got end mounting on the pouch, center line of the belt, we're ready to go. We're going to trim the excess. One little school of thought, inboard, outboard, everybody wants to know, hot topic. So, you can roll inboard, you can roll outboard, but there are a couple schools of thought that if you roll it one way or the other and bind it down, it puts pressure on the friction adapter and is going to make it slide or slip, either way. So, be mindful of what you do, especially if you're in the military. Dudes will gig you. That's kind of why we clean it off. I usually go one space. I might hack off two to try to give one clean presentation. It's just aesthetically, it's pleasing to me. I try to stop on even numbers, but I can trim just past that a little bit and I can still have adjustments. And I say that because I have low self-esteem and I'm never going to let myself gain enough weight to where I have to let go 3 more. So for me, I feel confident I can hack this off right now and I'll be good. So
as you're picking that out too, it's like if you're going to trim it right before this bar tack. Yep. By trimming it in the middle, leaving up more room to fray. So trimming it wherever you want to, but right in front of that bar tack.
So that's the bar tack we want to go with. I'm just spinning this
too. This is kind of one of those things where a solid permanent marker comes in handy. You can, because again, you eyeballed it, but then you forgot it, and then you cut something else. So again, it just kind of some of those telltale things that we may or may not have done wrong.
I mean, guys who do a bunch of winter stuff, you start putting on 2-3 layers underneath here, you're gonna have to lay out the belt some. So we do that, and then we take this thing, we roll it over on an edge, and then we make it factory smooth. Cool? Just roll the thing at a little bit of a 45. Now it's clean. Then take this thing and run a piece of double-sided Velcro over it so that thing's secure now.
So a few things too, I know some people like Velcro, but also some sort of hockey tape, rigger's tape as well. It's easy to tape up if people are worried about it coming loose.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Next, ETK. Everybody wants to know why. Multiple reasons. One of the owners of this company was one of our bud instructors. Super cool dude. He's made all kinds of stuff. He ran multiple companies. But really, we got issued some really bomb tourniquets. In the teams, historically, NSW medics are really good. All the guys coming back from MARSOC were all Navy corpsmen, and they hand-built all these blowout kits. So I mean, those contents are the same.
Yeah, the contents was super important, but also the profile. Super thin, not bulgy, and that was a big reason why we wanted to design our IFAC pouch around this med kit, was so it's very streamlined. It comes already kind of heat shrink and sealed, but it has all the major things that we found useful to have. We have the tourniquet sleeve right here, so it can be an ambi, you can pull it left or right-handed. We're always moving around on our kit, but it's nice to have, you can get to it with either arm, right or left. But as well as, like, we used to keep our tourniquet under this flap. You open up your med kit, your tourniquet falls out, so if you don't necessarily need your tourniquet right away, it allows us to open and get our med kit before we get to our tourniquet.
Yep. Yeah. I usually bury mine. I'm trying to stow that thing down and try to get the profile as small as possible. And then as far as tourniquet selection, just know what you're running. If you're running traditional cat, one of the soft tees, something in between, understand the nuances of how I load this. I know everybody talked about in med scenarios, got to be able to get to it with both hands. We'll understand that, yeah, that's why we mount on the back. We can get to it with both hands. But understand that if I'm pulling it in this fashion, it's going to take a whole hell of a lot to be able to get past that elastic. So just know you might have to push to pull. You can get it with both hands. We were doing that for years. It was like the same thing. We used to put, remember the Coke bottles? We used to do it for lower lumbar support. We'd stack them up and
plastic bottles.
Yeah, we'd put them to take the weight off your plates. It does the same thing. So now that piece sits up on your lower back just a little bit, and it provides that lumbar support when you're wearing plates.
And that was one big thing we messed around with too, was the actual height. of this pouch where it fit on your lower back. So, you know, we did different iterations on where the MOLLE started, where the belt loop started. So this is kind of where we found the happy medium and the best solution.
We're going True North Concepts modular holster adapter. We found these things, actually, one of the guys on social, I guess, sent them, and they're awesome. We used to run the Safari drop legs. Those things are great, but just with the rigidity of this belt to have to go through that pass through, it takes up so much of the material and just, to be honest, just not comfortable. This streamline approach allows these forks to go in whatever set of MOLLE field you want, and run a nice clean aluminum plate on your side.
A couple things I love about it: it's lightweight, it's stiff, but also allows the flex that you need to have, whether it's helicopters, vehicles getting in or out of. You can bolt the holster directly to the MHA and adjust it, you know, the height and the cant, forward, backwards, up, down, as well as, you know, it takes G code, Safari Land, some of the QLS type holster adapters as well. And then the option for the leg strap, I know we all ran the Safari Land double leg holster or double strap holster for a while. What True North has done is cleaned a lot of that up and made it very simple and functional.
So as far as mounting this thing goes, I'm a big fan of redonning the belt and having your buddy do a check. We know the pistol's going somewhere between there and there. We already know it. I'm usually a 2 or a 3, but we can crack these things just a little bit to try to get them started, and I'll show you why, because you don't really know. If we get them to where they're just spaced out a little bit, I'm gonna get my handy dandy shooting buddy over here, or my wife, or whoever else, to help line me up here. So I've got that thing. I put my hand down to my side, just normal draw stroke, and I see where it feels natural, and I know it's somewhere in that general vicinity. So the way this thing mounts, these two bars are going to go kind of wherever you want it, probably in that kind of configuration.
Something you can do with your buddy or whoever, kind of cheat and see these spots make the most sense.
Yeah.
And then basically we can tighten it up once he takes it off, but again, if that's the location.
Yeah, I mean, that feels pretty, yeah. Let's try that.
So I'm actually not a fan of blue Loctiting these, just because once you blue Loctite them, they're impossible to get undone, at least in my experience. So I just pay attention and make sure that they're tight before I put them on. It's kind of just normal gear maintenance. So just my take.
Cool. So we have those. Everything's mounted. We'll get our hardware. We'll get this thing mounted up, and then we have to mount our Safari Land QLS. It's the way we run our holsters. So it's a badass system, super compatible with everything else, and that's what's kind of nice, and we'll kind of get into with the rest of the pouch suites, is trying to make everything modular. So that's really one of the schools of thought for it. So
no, it's nice. I mean, the QLSs, it allows you to switch from SIGs to Glocks, 2011s, whatever you're running, and you don't have to change the holster setup at all, just because you can pull that QLS right off.
I mean, selfishly, it's really nice for us.
Yeah,
because we have to swap through so much. I mean, we run a flat range with these guys shooting Glock 34. Now we got to go in, we got to shoot SIG, yeah, staccatos and everything else in between. It's a nightmare, and you see how long it takes to MOLLE these things on. It's not realistic to have, 12 different belts set up. So, yeah, that's why it's nice. Cool. All right, we'll get this thing mounted up. I don't have to baby it, but I'm also not trying to break out in sweat like we used to. I swear, man, like some of these things have just whooped my ass over the years.
yeah.
Like some of the hardest things I've ever, I told it to a group the other day, I was like, some of the hardest things that I've had to break in my life are heavyweight retaining bands and those little Loctite and those little zip ties that lock in my kids' toys. I'm telling you, dude,
Those things will fuck you up.
Dude, like I've almost knocked my teeth out. I'm not kidding you. Like I pulled so hard. Oh.
I mean, a few things with this though that I always check is like I'm anal about the tightness and making sure it's even, so you can flip around the backside and you'll see this little screw head just barely popping out, and as long as that's even, I'm good with that.
Yeah. I mean, because you can. I mean, those things are all rubber. I mean, you can crank them all the way and push these things through, but I mean, it's just a little bit of a snag. You don't really want that. So I guess while we're here, we'll talk about it. leg strap, no leg strap. I used to not be a pistol guy, and then I realized that you can run a pretty cool system. And
I mean, I think one of the reasons why we weren't running leg straps was because the technology and designs weren't really caught up to the function we needed them for. I ran without a leg strap eventually when I was running a pistol, and just knew I had to draw it straight up and down, because a lot of guys won't run leg straps. They'll draw it diagonally or sideways and get their pistol hung up.
Yep.
And so, I mean, that's a big thing. Now, I mean, I think this is super functional. I definitely wear it on deployments, because you were losing mobility when you used to have the old setup.
The thing I used to hate is we'd run around with no leg strap, and every time you'd step, it would slap. That is so loud, dude. It's echoing. Oh, it drives me nuts. So you can size this thing for you now. You can get it kind of close. We can talk about it. I know Cole is a reverse guy, puts all the Fastex in the back. Right?
Yeah, that's my quirkiness. You know, I like to have the strap or the clip in the back. Just I like to try and streamline and slim up everything on my sides. And I just kind of view that as something that's going to catch onto something in the most inopportune time, and kind of preserving it as well. It's plastic, you know, you beat it up, it's going to break. And then too, it's another opportunity to trim up any excess. You can leave some if you're bouncing between summer and winter, but I'll trim it up, and then I'll tape it up as well.
Yeah, I don't know why. I've never really cut the excess off here. I usually double it back, but I don't know why. Usually don't.
I mean, a big thing too is like the chafing. You know, you have one of those tri-glides or whatever right in between your legs, and you don't realize it's in the wrong spot until you're walking 10K.
You know what? You've motivated me. You've motivated me to hot knife. It's time.
So your partner can always help with motivation.
Yeah. I'm gonna give myself just a wee bit extra. Because we're on Vernon's program, you never know where that thing's gonna go. All right, so we got this thing mounted on. MHA's on there, leg strap. You can reorientate this thing one more time to make sure you're about to do it right. You imagine how this thing's gonna be on there. That is going to bolt onto here. MHA is gonna go up.
So a couple things I do dig with the modularity is you can hook this up right here. You also can flip it around and raise it up some. So for, you know, shorter, smaller people, whatever, you can raise this leg strap up. You're not just married to this one setting. So I definitely dig the modularity on it.
Yeah, you can go above or below. I mean, just be mindful the QLS forks, depending on what kind of system you're riding. If you're a direct thread, just safe and comfort. If you're gonna rock it all the way down, just be mindful of that.
I mean, that's the right order too. It's like you have to put the leg strap on first, because if you put in a QLS, you won't be able to access some of the screws.
Yep. So, not that we've done it. Not that we've done that. All right, boys, we're back. So we're mounting down our QLS. That way we can swap out holsters. We've got Glock. We've got SIGs. It makes it super easy on the range. You pound away at SIG, you have to drop real quick to throw on Glock. It just, whole thing locks in. You just press these two. Now we can do a holster swap.
I mean, so, a couple of checks too before you really tighten it down all the way. This thing can cant, you know, left, right, forward, backwards, up and down. So doing another test fit. So you put on whatever holster you want, gun, obviously clear and safe, so it's safe. But you do another fitment real quick. It's like, because I changed my angle actually and I moved it a little forward. But just kind of little things like that.
I like mine north-south. Finish this thing up real quick, and then we'll go double pistol, single rifle. Are you setting yours up for like a range belt or with kit?
I usually always kind of set mine up like with kit. But I think too, even covering like what we're calling a range belt is still a duty belt, because other people have so much shit that they have to carry. So wherever your mags are, they're there for a reason. We reference range, but you know, you might have handcuff, just different stuff, mace, all that kind of stuff. So we have a pretty open belt and limited pouches we're putting on, but
double pistol, single rifle pouch. We went with these based off SIG, but we need the modularity to be able to run 2011. Same thing. We got to be able to run Glock because everybody runs Glock. Every department does. So we've got to be able to run a wide variety of these things at the same time, right?
Yeah, I mean, one big reason, like, why we did the taper is it gets tighter down here, you know, the 4-inch stretch right here, but the taper comes down so it tightens down on the rounds, because obviously the fewer rounds you get, the rounds are further down here, so the weight rests down here, but the tolerances, that's we don't have a bungee or a flap on these models. But again, you don't have to swap mag pouches, which is super nice. I mean, I have Kydex ones, different inserts, and you can never have the modularity between SIGs, Glocks, 2011s. But now it's kind of a one-stop shop. You know, we've jumped up and down, turned upside down, and they keep the rigidity. One big thing on maintenance-wise, though, is we don't leave our mags in there because you're going to stretch out the bungee for sure.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we found out, we were rocking these things, 3/4 of my time I'm running Leathermans in here because we're on the yard line, running around, changing optics, doing everything else. So like, it's super nice because this shit doesn't come out, but we can still reholster, we can holster everything we want. So for me personally, for this belt, I'm running everything up front these days. I'm trying to get it as close to my front on my center line as I can, and then I leave a gap, one field for single rifle. I do that just because if I stack them all up in here and I start dropping in multiple mags, it gets really crowded in my workspace. So I have to have at least one space in between. That way I can get a clean draw stroke. Another reason we didn't go all the way with Kydex and a bunch of hard inserts is because the reality is we're on the flat range a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's
just
great for
shooting
training.
pistol. And I hated being like a gypsy camp. Like, I had mags shoved in my back pockets. I had them all over the place. I had no place to carry them in. It wasn't realistic for me to run with 12 pistol mags because I never did that at work. I felt like it was cheesy. And I feel like now with these things, it just holds double pistol. So I can run with 4 mags and I'm basically just feeding from the back anyway. So it's nice to be able to hold those cans of Copenhagen, flashlights, everything else.
Water, whatever.
Yeah.
So
So,
snack bars, Snickers.
so same thing before. We get these things started. Get my handy dandy little spacer exactly where I want them. I might do one for Cole here. I'll back this thing up one. You guys were miling all the way through the Tegris. So that's one of the things too. You can skip a space. You can bring these pouches up. They higher. So the magazine pouch will ride higher in your belt line. The issue is guys that run side plates, radios, everything else, that space in between your waistline and your rib cage gets really crowded fast. So be mindful of kind of what you're going to have to carry, if anything, and what's going to be the most comfortable for you.
Some tricks too, you know, with these molly weaves, we have a little bit of hard plastic right here, and it helps when you're molly weaving in here. If you can see it with what DJ's doing, you're able to keep that rigidity while coming through here. Vice a wet noodle, it's hard to kind of push through.
It is. Everything's got to be done with pliers and everything else.
So kind of as DJ's doing this, a few tricks, it's like being able to grab either with some needle nose and pull that molly through. I mean, again, you can use pins, some of these tools as well to push through. I will say what's nice too is even the single rifle pouch, you can fit the typical 5.56, 223 mags as well as some of the AK mags. But if you look at these QLS forks, they are drastically different. And when you put that height on, your draw is going to be different. So this is going to be higher than this. So make sure you pay attention to where you're mounting them. And we'll show you real quick too. So you put that on there.
It's a much higher draw stroke.
Maybe probably 1.5 inches or 2 almost.
Yeah. But I mean, you can see how easy it is just to get those things on there.
Yep.
Like
So the modularity of it's
yeah, I mean, like
irreplaceable.
I mean, that's why we did it. Like, I've got to shoot Glock with you. 15 minutes later, got Manny and the boys like, hey, shoot this thing real quick. I'm like, I don't have time to go swap a belt. It's not practical, but just be able to do a quick swap. So yeah, these things are great. All right,
Well, I guess that's it for the belt build. Leave us some polite questions in DMs or comments. And that's the right-handed, and we'll go to the left-handed here in a few.
cool. Appreciate you guys.